paid for the work we've done? When will we be paid for the work we've done? We fought in your wars in every land to keep this country free, y'all, for women, children, and men. But anytime we ask for
issue of reparations long ago. So we are here, my friends, and it's an interesting place. It's an interesting place. I'm about to teach some Mandarin Chinese. Anybody got your Mandarin Chinese together? Now I know my brother here got it because I stepped on his toe once, and he said some stuff in Mandarin that's not fit to tell such a nice good group. But I'm going to teach you some Mandarin Chinese. I'm going to teach you that they don't have a word for crisis. They don't have a word for it. They really don't use words and symbols, but they don't have a word for crisis. They use two symbols: danger and opportunity. So to them, a crisis is a dangerous opportunity. My friends, we are in a dangerous opportunity. Just this morning, I almost insulted you and said your Supreme Court. I can't even say it in jest. The members of the Supreme Court have ruled against the idea of affirmative action. And they said that they're hiding under beautiful words they use. I love these words. Gorgeous words. We're all equality and this and that. Everybody's for that. The dissenting opinion said, by Sotomayor said, America is not and has not been a colorblind nation. Therefore, we need to bring the resolution of color in here. All right. So we see the danger of some of it. We see the right wing determined to take what few liberties that you have. Determined. And they will not stop. Some people, well, I'll be kind. And my friends, this is not because we wrote the law wrong or any of that. This is an ideological court. They believe that you have asked for too much, gone too far. Perhaps they may even say you may have forgotten your place. And they are determined, led by, and I'll say it publicly, Clarence Thomas. The only thing he hates worse than himself is people who look like him. Clarence Thomas. And I can go on down the line, the rest of them need to be called out too. But when history is written, he will have a special place because he has been a special man. Which brings us back here, my friends. I think with my hands. The question of reparations is a question of power. If you have enough power, you get reparations. You don't have enough power, you will not get it. It's not going to be fine words written down. It's not going to be because we curtsied and said pretty please. It's not going to be any of those things. It's going to be because groups like this got together and said, not only are we not going back, because we really don't have much back to go back to, but that we are moving forward. Because this one, my friends, this one is not really for us. This is legacy. This is for your grandchildren. This is for their grandchildren. This this one, we may never taste the fruit here. We may never have the sweetness of that victory, but we'll be danged if our kids always have to drink vinegar. No, we can't go down like that. So, all right, you heard the reparation. Now, this is going to be a family meeting, my friend. That means we're going to go back to what we used to do, our call and response. You remember when y'all went to church? Y'all don't remember? Well, is that right? Oh, what a shame. What a shame. We can say amen, but it couldn't be too loud. All right. We're going to make some noise tonight. We're going to remember, okay, that we won't take you back to church. We'll take you back home when you knew your last name. All right, don't get me started. I'm going to mess around and say some stuff here. All right.
So, my name's Annette Wilcox. With the organization Freedmen Project. Annette Wilcox. With the U.S. Freedmen Project. And the U.S. Freedmen Project is an organization that's looking to reinvigorate the lost and forgotten messages or missions of the Freedmen's Bureau and the Freedmen's Family. Post-1877, those institutions were dismantled, and Jim Crow, segregation, terrorism, and discrimination was the lay of the land for the next 100 years. So we are also advocating for political benefits, education, advocacy for American freedmen, and American freedmen are the people who descend from chattel slavery and its badges and vestiges in the United States. Okay, so my great-great-grandfather was a slave, enslaved. He was born in 1826, and his name was Archibald Mowat. So I'm fighting for his legacy and my parents, grandparents, and further on. So we actually met with our organization partnered with the California team that worked on the bill that is today being, the final report is being put in today on their recommendations for reparations. We also met with Senator Connolly and Senator Sanders, and we are proposing and have spoken about our concerns about the community eligibility in the bill. And we think it's a huge problem. It's going to be a huge problem. I mean, in light of the Supreme Court decision today, and just in general, the civil rights laws since 1964, any race-based policies are unconstitutional. Besides the unconstitutionality of it, we also feel that it's not just. That reparations for its slavery and its vestiges and badges should be for people who descend from persons who were enslaved in the United States. This doesn't mean that we don't support other groups and they're trying to get justice. There's organizations called CARICOM that is fighting for reparations for people.
She'll hold it.
Good. Peace, brothers and sisters.
Yes.
I'm Omowale Clay. You probably know my brother at Black Spectrum Theater Company. All right. I'm a member of the December 12th movement. So let me first say, you always want to first clarify history. And I think in the document that was put out, I think it's important to note when we talk about that history that in this country, in 2000, 400 people went to Durban, South Africa for the World Conference Against Racism. And at that conference, under advice and guidance from some of our brothers and sisters in the African countries that advised us said to us, if you have not established a crime, then what are you getting compensation for? International human rights, there is a thing called crimes against humanity that give an international legal basis for the right to reparations beyond the government that was instrumental in enslaving you. So we took people to Durban, and out of Durban came the Durban Declaration, which gave our people in this hemisphere the right to reparations in international law from the basis of slavery was a crime against humanity and always was. I think that's one historical note that must be a part of any documents that are done. The second point was, there was in 2001 the first national reparations rally in the United States took place in Washington, D.C., where over 75,000 people from different groups around the country came together for the first time in the history of the United States to talk about our right to reparations. I think that must be a part of any historical document that is written about that. We can go back to Callie House, but we also have to recognize and understand the actual organizing and work that has gone on. Because it wasn't just in chambers, it was in the streets of our community. The other point I think is important to note is after the World International Conference in Washington, D.C., the first national rally, there were rallies in a number of cities around the country that were organized in Memphis, Tennessee, in Columbus, South Carolina, and back at the United Nations where that demand for reparations is. So I just want to clarify that historically. Any document that we talk about our history of reparations needs to be a part of that. We also recognize the importance of INCOPA in terms of one of the first mass organizations to talk about reparations. And that's an important document because those are people on the ground doing the work around reparations. And we say not talking about it, but actually on the ground working around it. So that has to be an important part of that historical document. Also, the Institute of the Black World, chaired by Ron Daniels, was very instrumental in organizing a CARICOM committee. We participated in the documentation and the creation of that committee. And the importance of that was it brought the CARICOM countries into the demand, international demand for reparations. That is an important part of that document because it was outside of Africa, it was in this hemisphere. The other important point about those three organizations, INCOPA, the December 12th movement, and the Institute of the Black World, was because in the New York State Legislature, for the first time in the history of the New York State Legislature, the Assembly, the New York State Assembly, passed twice in the Assembly reparations bills. What was significant about those bills, different than the bill in California, was that it insisted on community controlling that commission. Not elected officials, but community control. The bill that is passed, and of course that bill is passed the first time, well, the governor will sign it, but the television said she'll sign it. But the bottom line was, it gave 3 votes to the governor, and I don't know what relationship she has to talking about our reparations, 3 votes to the Senate, and 3 votes to the Assembly. The prior bill that passed in the Assembly gave the governor 1 vote, it gave the Assembly 2 votes, the Senate 2 votes, and it gave community groups like the ones I talked about in COPA, December 12th, and the Institute of the Black World, 2 votes each. So the majority on this commission was grounded in the community. And I think that's historic and significant. But here we are now. That bill did not get passed because it wasn't supported in the Senate. It passed twice in the House. And if I remember, I think Assemblyman then, Senator Sanders, Mr. Barron said to say to you, if you remember, you said, Charles, if you can get it past Ways and Means Committee, I'll support that bill. Well, that didn't happen. But I want you to know, historically, it passed twice for the first time in the history of the New York Senate.
that bill passed twice, and it was a community-based bill, controlled by the community, and certainly not giving significant representation to the governor of this state. So I wanted to lay that out, because here we are now. And the question of the strength or the weakness of anything is how it's tied to the community. We could always start from, there's no history, there's no unity, there's no this, but those three organizations were in the bill. It was a community-controlled bill that passed the Assembly. It failed in the Senate. And why did it fail in the Senate? Because of the lack of unity in the leadership of the Senate to take it there. Wow. Cousins, the head of the Senate, in fact, would have passed the bill if it was not opposition and out of our own community. So we want to first just clarify history so we know where we are. So what is before us right now? What before us right now is to take what we have and make it work for us. And we'll participate in that because we're going to fight as it was raised on the ground. Wherever the discussion of reparation comes up, we're going to be there. When they create a commission, we know who has to be on that commission to give it legitimacy. This is not a bill to investigate reparations. This cannot be a bill to study reparations. This bill is founded on the basis of, this bill is founded on the necessity to talk about remedies. Remedies. And we're not going to get into a discussion about who deserves something when we ain't got nothing. So folks for the Caribbean, folks from who grew up in this country, would we deny Marcus Garvey reparations? So I only say that to say, I'm wrapping it up, Senator Sanders. I'm only saying that to say we're not going to divide ourselves before we come together to demand for ourselves. We're not going to talk about our blood relationship.
And we do have on the table, if you didn't receive yet, the national resolutions on reparations for the NAACP. I just wanted to comment on some of the things that were said and offer some suggestions in reference to the power. We have our power of vote, and we must use it. If we want the governor, the elected officials to look like us and think like us, some of us, and I'll say including myself, have to start running for these positions so that it can change. We have to be inside of it and outside of it. Also, I think it's very important that we do jot down what we want in the history. Although we've seen it with the COVID, that we are not all on the same facts. With history, within our communities, whether it is people from the islands, I've had people from the islands say they're not from Africa. So we have to make sure that we do document the history because everyone is not on the same facts. So I think that part is important. And I also think that it's important to have reparations with the whole African diaspora, wherever you come from, because they too experience crimes against humanity just because of the color of their skin. I would suggest that we find ways to make sure that we have generational wealth, that we're just not giving money and then it goes back to the white man. So for instance, like if we have money and it has to go into a black bank and we live off the entrance so that it can be generational. Or we get land and we live off of the entrance from the land, just so that it can be our children's children while we empower our community about finances, because that's one of the challenges. We don't want to just give money and then as a people we're back at the same time. Thank you so much, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you in the community, because together we do win. So we do have to work together. Thank you.
I'm just encouraging everybody, reminded that here, wherever you want to, Brother Wade, in Southeast Queens, we are respectful. That we don't have to make faces or anything to stuff we don't agree with. We can just head folk out. Wherever you want to say it, brother.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Sanders. My name is Ivan Massa. I'm a graduate of Howard University. I'm educated as an accountant and have had over 40 years in the field. I'm a licensed enrolled agent. So I can count on one hand how many times I've had opportunity to speak to reparations. I did take one course at Howard University about African American history. So I might be a little bit miseducated, but from so far, I don't think I'm as miseducated as I thought I was. I will say one more thing, and I'll read what I wrote. Okay. I'm also a Republican district leader, and my task is not only to speak truth to Democratic elected power, but also to, more importantly, to speak truth to the Republican leadership at the county level and higher, where they are off track about what our people need. So let me go. A call for reparations may come when a person, group, or nation unjustly receives crimes against humanity applied to their persons and or property. In the case of African slaves and their American descendants, these crimes include abduction from their homeland, family, and community, physical assault, rape, mutilation, murder, enslavement, crimes too numerous to mention. Crimes to property continue during American slavery in the 1600s on and up to the present, captioned as institutional racism, including segregation, Jim Crow, redlining, and what have you. Even intellectual property where we did not get credit either via financial remuneration or historical recognition for our inventions and or contributions to the wealth and prosperity of the USA.
My name is Darlene Wilcox. I'm U.S. Freedmen. I'm born in Harlem, raised in Springfield Gardens. My maternal grandfather is Jamaican. The rest of my family is descended from folks enslaved in the United States. I'm a retired banking executive, and I constantly hear this what I call just a check shaming. And just a check shaming seems like we're the only people that when we ask for hard cold cash, we're kind of like shamed, and people kind of treat you like you have no, we're supposed to want all these other lofty things. But yes, I'm just a check person. Number one, I'm in banking. Okay, when I used to do class action suits, when someone came to us and told us we owed them money, we did not tell them they didn't deserve that money. We figured out if we owed them that money, then we gave it to them. And that's it. I wanted to make a point that all Asians did not get Japanese reparations. As a matter of fact, all Japanese did not get Japanese reparations. There were Japanese that came here that were brought here from Peru, and in turn, they did not get reparations in the 1980s. I make the point that if I moved to South Africa in the 1980s, I would be remiss to sit there and look in the face those people who suffered in Sharpeville and in Soweto and tell them that I am due reparations in South Africa because I'm Black. It is an insult to my great-great-great-grandfather. I would not want to insult their families as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we are coming for the end of our program. Look at your watches. We're supposed to be out here at 8:30. So I'm going to, after that brother who I don't believe is, after these next three people, I'm going to take a point of privilege, and I'm going to ask Representative, pardon me, must be late in the evening, representatives from the two major schools that we have to make a closing statement. And then I will give us our benediction. Sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you. I don't have all these fancy college degrees. I'm a community member. But I tell them, brother, I've been living my last 30 years here in Southeast. one thing I do know, reparations should be limit-based to those ancestors of slaves in this country. But I'm hearing a lot of things. First of all, a lot of the stuff that y'all are talking about is stuff that our legislators are supposed to be doing now. Now, the power starts in these chairs because, as my senator always say, they work for us. And as you just see what happened in Brooklyn, it's very easy to remove. It's not hard at all. But staying on reparations, as I stated, reparations should be lineage-based from those who were born in, or from those descendants of slavery in this country. There's a whole lot, I know what we meant. That's a whole different, that should be a whole different argument. And that argument should be put on the table because our land was stolen. Y'all talking about 40 acres in the mule, they done stole a whole lot more than that.
That's right.
Matter of fact, one, we don't even talk about why we came here because our people were being murdered. That's why a lot of us wind up being
That's right.
our people hail from North Carolina. They talk, oh, we can't find the records. There's no better records in the North Carolina. They know exactly who we are. So, one of the things I'd like us to do, because as far as I know, this is the first meeting. Nothing gets done at the first meeting. Let's start working together, talking, and it's not a bad thing that we all ain't on the same page, because nobody is. You know, we start here and we take it to where it needs to go. Thank you.
Thank you,
I show you, and then I'll get back. And then again, I'm going to have the different schools give their closing, give 2-minute closing.
Good evening. First and foremost, America was founded on a lie. It was founded on the transformation of human beings into slaves, into capital. Okay? America was founded on that. You know, this whole idea that it will be a constitutional issue to get reparations, folks that do not have that lineage, that's what we get is what we fight for. What we get was what we fight for. In 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson says equal was legal. Okay, in 1896, separate but equal was legal. That same Supreme Court in 1954, you know, with Brown versus Board of Education, you know, same Supreme Court said that separate but equal was unconstitutional. And what was the difference? The difference was those people on the ground making, you know, forcing that court to interpret the Constitution in a way that reflected people's interests. Okay, that forced them to change from their position in 1896 to 1954. Yes, Thurgood Marshall was a brilliant attorney. He was a brilliant attorney, okay? And the work that he did, we know his history, the work that he did with the NAACP was extraordinary. But what changed that court to interpret the law to reflect the interests of the people was those people on the ground. So what becomes of reparation in 2023 is what we make it. Is what we make it. Okay? We can't be cow-tied or be held to believe that if we go when we know what is right to ask for, that it will be unconstitutional. We cannot do that. And the whole idea of payment to individuals for reparation, how do you calculate being kidnapped? How do you calculate being raped? How do you calculate being forced to labor? How do you calculate being forced to bear children, and then your children and their successive generations go through that same process. How do you calculate that? That is collective rape, collective trauma, collective suffering. You know, the remedy has got to be a collective one to deal with that collective trauma that we have suffered. Not only through chattel slavery, but also the legacies of chattel slavery that continued for over 100 years into 2023. Okay, and we know, like Brother Omowale said, we weren't just dropped in the United States. We were kidnapped from Africa. We were dropped through South America. We were dropped in the Caribbean. We dropped here, and we were moved. People moved. You know, throughout slave masters carried us as they choose. So how do you define who we, like Brother Omowale said? How we should not begin to start from fighting who should get reparations before we even get it. Our objective, our goal should be first building unity with all Africans here on the ground. All Africans here on the ground in the United States. Building unity around our collective suffering. When the brother talked about the lineage of slavery, he talked about redlining. Africans, quote unquote, only from Africans in slavery lineage. They weren't the only ones that suffered from redlining. Every single black person suffered from redlining. Every single black person from slavery to the present suffered from police terror. Every single, so our solution has got to be a collective one.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, we have to stop the confusion.
Wait, can we, this brother trying to speak? He was very quiet when everybody else spoke. Why don't we listen to you?
Thank you. First of all, we have to stop the division. We are all Africans. So we have to stop it because your oppressors want you to say that. So we have to stop it. Now, piggybacking off Brother Omowale, Annette, and Raja, that this has to be an institutional remedy. And what's most important is that we need an independent, black-controlled economic and financial institution in which we hold on to our neighborhoods, because we are losing our neighborhoods through ethnic cleansing. Southeast Queens is changing. Harlem is changing. So the remedy must be totally independent, progressive, non-capitalist, non-imperialist, so that we are guaranteed that we will keep our community, and we'll have the proper health care, and we will get the proper equity that we deserve.
Well, there I go then.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Senator Sanders, and thank you to Senator Conway in his absence. Let me just say this. As a Community Board 12 chair, and what I have seen, I've been on the board since 2009, and I've lived in this community all my life, born and raised. My parents are from North Carolina. My mother's from Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia. What I've seen on the community board and what has been going on, not just in our community here in Jamaica, but every black community across the nation. There's a few things that go on. They mess with the schools, they mess with your transportation, they mess with your food. Everybody, all of a sudden, every black nation has a food desert, and they mess with the fact that we can't go to banks. We can put money in banks, but we can't get anything out of the banks. We can't borrow or anything else. This is systemic. And everything that we are dealing with, that I have seen working through the board, is systemic. Every single thing. We have to stay united. When we have these community board meetings, when I implore you, have your block association meetings. We will come. When it comes to this reparation situation, all boots on the ground. Everybody's view is necessary, but what has not been said here, I've been watching TikTok. And yes, we're gonna have to be really serious about that language. I know you're laughing because I watch TikTok. But this lineage conversation is serious because they are already coming up with, I'm from Asia. And now they're revealing their Black history to Asia. So now that's opening up a door. This is why we have to be specific. And we have to make the language correct. And maybe it's not going to be just one language, but in this document we have to have amendments and pieces to make it come together, because they're all, I knew this was going to do what it's doing. God bless you for the history. I knew it was going to do, because when I started seeing that on TikTok, I said, uh-oh, the senator done hit something. Because now everybody else is getting on board. Now we're going to see everyone come up with how their lineage goes back to Africa. So we have to get the language correct. So please, let's work together. Let's have the meetings that we have to have. Let's come with solutions, not to argue, but with solutions. Because that's how we're working on the board. Anything we're dealing with, we're coming with solutions. And the children and your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, we will be grateful. The wheel has already been done because the Jews started with their reparations. Let's take some pages out of their book and let's see how they did it and how they got it to go the way it's going in their favor. Thank you.
I want it as fair as possible. Heads, tails. That way that is tails. Would you be kind enough to come and present first? Give your quarterback, brother. Now you got 2 minutes to present whatever you believe that you want to present.
Okay. So again, I'm with the U.S. Freedmen Project, and again, we were the ones that pushing for lineage-based reparations in the New York State bill. And we were the ones that are also fighting to get the commission to be experts and to not be in the hands of nonprofit organizations that already have an idea of what they think reparations should be. So if everyone's saying about the communities being pushed out, they're talking about we organizations or nonprofits who are now not in the bill. So we think it's more fair to have not outside companies in the bill. Our point has been, okay, our point, most important point, is that reparations should focus on providing meaningful and impactful measures that address the systemic disadvantages facing American freedmen. Another thing we're fighting for is the disaggregation bill that everyone signed on to. You senators signed on it too for the AAPI community, or you signed on it too for the African American community. Expanding the eligibility community to anyone of African descent risks diluting the impact and purpose of reparations. While it is essential to recognize the shared experiences of diverse communities, a broad approach could inadvertently divert resources and attention away from those who have borne the consequences.
First, let me just start out saying I appreciated your comments from the community, because I think your point was you got to get on the ground and organize. I think the unity that's necessary. When we talked about, and first let me clear up the fact, the three organizations are not non-profits. The three organizations are organizations that have been in existence for decades fighting around this issue. So it's not that they came to it as a non-profit. We came to it as a mission to raise that. The points that were made tonight, I think if anything, there's a bill that's on the verge of being passed. We have to make it certain, passed by the government. We have to make sure it happens, and we have to take this to the communities. Yes, to St. Albans, my former home, and around this borough, around this city, it needs to happen. But I think the bottom line for us is, let us not have any illusions about who we're fighting. And I think as my brother said, they can't define for us what it is. This difference around lineage is not linkage, is not lineage, is not a question about whether we're giving something to somebody and we have not even established the power to create it. And if we start out with division, it's like we don't trust each other. We know. Our culture, and the reason that doesn't happen is precisely because of the...
Oh, wait. This man's trying to speak. Everybody, let's listen. I'll give you an extra 30 seconds.
When we talk about the history of who we are, our African heritage, that's what's in South Carolina. That's what's in Georgia. Our history of who we are. We take children that are not our children and raise them because that is our humanity. All I'm saying is, when you talk about people are now saying, oh, I'm African, we're not talking about that. I mean, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about people who are victims of the criminality that's happened to us. We have to speak to that. And if we're not organizing around that, and we're starting from telling people, you ain't part of this, as opposed to the institutions we have to create for our people to have a better quality of life. All the resources that we're fighting for is to create better schools, to create better ways to build for ourselves. And that's our only point. And so therefore, I agree, we're off and running. We gotta put our bodies where our mouths are and continue organizing that, but we're not gonna be reduced to some petty bickering, and we ain't got a dime from these crackers. And they're not gonna give us nothing as long as they know that they can inject into our movement that we've got differences, and we ain't even fought to build our power together. So straight ahead, appreciate it, and just got some of our young people in here, but let's get our elders in here too.
Thank you to our brother Clay, and thank you, Senator Sanders. Again, I want to just put one more perspective out there for folks to consider as we're having these intentional conversations about reparations, right? There's a number of schools of thought. There is the harm-based concept, and there's the lineage-based concept. I remind folks that we are New York State government, state assembly member, state senator. So if we go down the path of harm reduction, it'll be harm reduction as it relates to those who are harmed New York State. If we go down the path of lineage, it'll be around the lines of lineage based on New York State. Hold on, let me just finish. I don't govern South Carolina, I don't govern New Jersey, but these are the things to consider. Hold on, one second. These are the things to consider as we're working through this and as we're trying to ensure the constitutionality piece. Personally, I'm not married to either one of the camps. My point is that we have to have a commission that studies all of it, including these pieces. And that also means making sure that we have representation on the commission from all of these different camps. That's like when I first spoke today, I said we need to have subject matter experts. The Freedmen folk are subject matter experts. The folks who are in the harm-based camp, these are subject matter experts that we have to hear from. But I just want folks to understand that this is New York. So we're trying to do this for the state of New York, and that helps us set the precedent for the other states, God willing, and those other states will be able to have a blueprint to be able to do for their states. Now, the federal government needs to ultimately do all 50 states, but we're trying to get this to where we're looking at it from the lens of New York State. So I just wanted to mention it from that angle, and just appreciate the two camps that we have in the room in the space today, because it's going to continue to add to the conversation. It's going to force the powers that be that never wanted to do this in the first place to be open to the concepts that we're discussing here in the room today. So I thank you, Senator, for this thoughtful conversation, and let's keep in mind New York.
I have been informed that the councilwoman had a person who wanted to speak, and I didn't understand that the council person who wanted to speak on the issue of reparations, Councilwoman Sabina Brooks Powers. So I have to make it for another day. It is true, sir, that our jurisdiction is in New York, just as California is not saying what can happen in New York. We can't say what can happen in other states. We do want to push other folk, and I believe that New York, which has had an oversized role in slavery, never forget the role of New York. It can be argued that if New York wasn't around, slavery would have fell earlier. New York had the banks that funded it. New York had the insurance company that insured the slave. New York built the ships that sank. New York traded the cotton. Yes, we built Wall Street. Yes, New York needs to make reparation and eat whatever the rest of the country does. New York needs to make reparation.